So earlier in the week, if you missed out, I went through and I did my whole season prediction after we've gone through all 32 teams in longer format episodes, detailing basically what we think about the entire team. Get a good view about what happened last season for every team, along with what changed for them in the offseason. So if you have a specific team, maybe your favorite team that you want to go back and look for in our channel, there's a playlist that you can check out where you can see us talk about your team for a really long time. But based off all that information, last episode went through, picked how I think the season's going to go, basically for all teams all at once. And now I have a playoff picture that I am going to go through and tell you how I think the playoffs are going to play out this season. If, my season plays out perfectly as I said it would, which it will. I mean, I'll tell you right now, it will.
Definitely will.
But, just in case I'm wrong, the backup plan for that is obviously Jake will be 100% correct, and he will be going over his season prediction next week, and then also his playoff predictions for the season, which will be very fun as well, because I know that there's at least one team in here that we feel very different about, and probably even more than that by the time it comes around. Because, all it takes is one game in the playoffs for you to lose and be done. So, are you ready to hear about my playoffs, Jake? Are you excited?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
All right. So, I don't really know where to start. I guess we can start with the wild card round in the AFC. We've got, and I'll start with the 7 versus the 2 game. So, as it's based off the rankings from the end of the last prediction I talked about, and the 7-seeded Chargers visit the 2nd-seeded Cleveland Browns in this. I feel like the Chargers, like I said, actually, I will give you credit here. At this point in the season, I feel like the defense may have been able to stabilize more. I'm still not terribly confident that they'll be able to stop the run, and especially traveling to Cleveland to play against the Browns, that's definitely still a huge concern of mine. But I think it'll be better than it is earlier in the season. And I think Justin Herbert will give this team a chance no matter what. The problem is that I still believe that the Browns are basically like as complete of a team in the NFL as you can get, and it's LA traveling to a relatively cold weather city. And my one concern for LA is still that I don't think their run defense will be tremendous. Like I said, I think it'll be better at this point in the season. Don't think it'll be tremendous. I think the Browns are able to take that game as the 2 seed versus the 7th seed, and that eliminates the LA Chargers in wild card weekend. Then, the second game in the AFC for wild card weekend I have is the 6-seeded Patriots heading to the 3rd-seeded Kansas City Chiefs, which maybe if you didn't check out the last episode, would sound like those teams aren't too similar, but actually it's the 13-4 Patriots heading to the 14-3 Chiefs, which, that's probably closer than a lot of you thought it would be. I feel like the Patriots got a lot easier of a schedule, kind of like we talked about with San Francisco. They lost a decent amount of games last year, which put them against worse opponents this upcoming season, and because of that, they were able to take advantage of it and beat those bad teams that they had on their schedule. I also think New England's roster is just much improved from last season, and they've still got Bill Belichick, which is a huge W. But in this game, New England going to Kansas City, I feel like it's still Kansas City, and even though they're this 3 seed, it's almost just because of other matchups that other teams in the conference had. They had easier schedules than the Chiefs did because the Chiefs were the 1 seed in the conference last year. They've got a lot of tough games on their schedule, even though they're arguably the best team in the NFL. That's what drops them to the 3 seed. And Belichick did put up a good game plan against them last year when they met up on a weeknight because of some COVID issues for the Patriots. And the defense put up a good battle. But I don't think the offense will be able to keep up with Kansas City's offense in this game, and I do think that the Chiefs still win that game. So, last game for Wild Card Weekend in the AFC is Baltimore heading to Buffalo. We had this game last year already in the divisional round. Baltimore headed to Buffalo as well. Buffalo is only the 4 seed this year, so not quite as good, but still at a decent record at 13-4. Won the division, and Baltimore's the 5 seed at 15-2, which is wild. So the away team is actually quote unquote better than the home team. But Even though the Ravens added receivers this offseason, I feel like it's probably going to play out kind of similarly to the way it did last year. I don't feel like the two teams changed enough this offseason. They both changed slightly, but neither of the teams did anything insane to make me think the scheme or the coaches or even the superstars on the team are going to change. Like I said, the Ravens added some decent receivers, but the Bills did a few things to make themselves better in certain areas, worse in others, and they're just not that different. So I feel like with a similar matchup to last year, I should probably go with Buffalo again. Buffalo's the home team also. Even though the Ravens were 15-2, that's a solid season, but geez, they're going to have to go on the road a lot as a 5 seed, and even if they do manage to pick up this win here, I don't know how far they can make it as a 5 seed because they're probably going to be going on the road for all 3 postseason games if they somehow manage to make it to the Super Bowl. But their roster is still very talented. So what do you think of my wild card round in the AFC?
All right, let's go back to Chargers Browns here. Yeah, I think if the Chargers make it to the playoffs, that's the extent of it. They've made it to the playoffs, and I am probably as high on the Chargers as anyone that is not an actual Chargers fan is. But I think best case scenario is you sneak into the playoffs and you like put Justin Herbert on a stage, and it's like, all right, you just gotta try to win it here. And like, as much as I talk up that defense, Brandon Staley, one year I don't think it's going to fix everything. It's not going to fix the woes. It's going to get them to the playoffs just because of better coaching in situations, because Anthony Lynn lost that team like 5 games and they could have gotten to the playoffs last year. But there are a couple things that win you games in the postseason. That's defense, which shaky. Coaching, which, I mean, he hasn't even, as much as I like Brandon Staley, he hasn't even coached a game yet. So I do think that just on talent alone, the Chargers can't get to the playoffs, but coaching is going to get you further in there. And then third thing is your quarterback's experience. And Justin Herbert has no experience in the playoffs, and also he plays his home games in a warm weather and in a dome. He's going to Cleveland to play with lake effect snow in January. No dome, and probably some rowdy fans that want to see Cleveland go to the Super Bowl. They're going to be chucking beer bottles onto the field. So I do agree with that. In that situation, I'd give Cleveland the win. Second game, Patriots, Kansas City. Yeah, it's still Kansas City's conference. I mean, they're not the 1 seed, but it's still their conference. Belichick has dialed up great game plans against them in the times that they've met up. But the last time he beat Patrick Mahomes was when he was a snot-nosed little brat that was winning MVP in his first year as a starter. He has gotten better, even though he's never matched statistically what he did that season. He has gotten better as a player through his experiences. I think Kansas City still wins that game just because of the offensive talent. Even if Belichick coaches up a great defense, I think that offense is just too much, which is weird because I'm contradicting what I'm saying of offense. Regular season games, defense wins postseason games, but in this situation, I think that's an exemption to the rule. And then Baltimore. Yeah, those two teams both added in 2 categories that they needed to add in, but I think it just evens out to net 0, and it puts you back where it was last season. The Bills added youth to that defensive line so they could get after quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson. The Ravens needed more people to throw the ball to, so they got wide receivers so Lamar could throw the ball to them. I mean, if Buffalo still runs that nickel defense that they ran and they still got pressure on Lamar running that like hybrid Buffalo nickel, whatever the media is calling it, even though they ran it majority of the season late in the year, stop Lamar. I think most teams will. Maybe they'll figure out how to break that, but like you said, both teams had additions to what they needed. It's just, I think those additions just negate each other, and it's back to where it was for that last playoff game.
Yeah, and it's in that game especially, I like you kind of alluded to, I just think that it's I don't think that any of those additions will become superstars this season. There's players in those groups that I like. I like Rousseau getting added to the Bills defensive line, and I like Bateman getting added to the receiving corps in Baltimore. Do I think that that either of those guys are going to be superstars this season? No. And if they're not superstars, I don't think it changes what the result will be in that game. As for the NFC wild card, I had a tough. I'm already like looking back and having a tough time with this. The Chicago Bears are the 7th seed, and they will be traveling to the LA Rams. And like I said, there's some surprise matchups happen in the NFL a lot. And the Chicago Bears do have a decent amount of talent on their roster. I think the Rams are probably a better team. But for whatever reason here, I decided that the Chicago Bears going to the LA Rams, finally having a quarterback on their roster that is competent, it must invigorate the team enough to make them actually be able to pull something out against the Rams. So this really, even in a surprising game for me, kind of a shock the world type of one, I guess. The
First
Bears,
ever 7-seed upset.
The Bears beat the Rams in the wild card round of the playoffs, and I'm basically going to say that it's off the back of Justin Fields, and maybe I guess I'll say the superstars for LA's defense aren't able to be as big of superstars as they need to be. It's two guys. I will say they lost a decent amount of depth on the defense, especially in the secondary, seemingly. And it's kind of, if it's a lot on Jalen Ramsey and a lot on Aaron Donald, if either of those two guys don't show up to play, I could see them having trouble, really in a lot of matchups this season. But I guess because of that, that's going to be how they lose to the Bears. And Justin Fields must have to make a lot of big plays for them. Then, this number 6 seed, New Orleans Saints, travel to the Washington football team here. I gotta say, I feel like at this point in the season, this is going to be an interesting one because it's probably going to be a lot more on the defenses than the offenses. I think the Washington football team is going to have a much improved offense this season from where they were last season, but the defense for the New Orleans Saints is no slouch. The defense for the Washington football team is no slouch, and New Orleans offense got worse. I don't think this will be too high scoring of a game, but I know that Washington is the home team, and for whatever reason, no matter what, I'm not really going to discuss this too long, because we've talked about it basically ad nauseum at this point with the Taysom versus Jameis thing. But honestly, no matter who you're walking in to that Washington game with as your starting QB, no matter who you walk into that game with as your starting QB, I feel like Washington's able to put together a game plan that means that they'll be able to shut down the Saints offense enough, and they'll be able to put enough points on the board to win that game. So they beat the Saints in Wild Card Weekend in the NFC. Then we have the 13-4 49ers traveling to the 4-seeded Minnesota Vikings, who are only 11-6. Once again, the 4-seed, the 5-seed visiting the 4-seed is the better team record-wise again, which is funny. The thing is, that's kind of comes up again with how I have this postseason playing out. Minnesota's easily, with how the teams are seeded in the NFC for me, they are by far like the only team with a significant home field advantage in the NFC. The rest of the teams above them don't have nearly as much of a home field advantage. And that could be another reason why I feel like Chicago's able to beat LA. Is that the Rams, really, it's almost more like a neutral site game, at least for the time being. I don't feel like their home field is too crazy. It's obviously better than the Chargers, but I don't think it's too crazy. And because of that, I think that the Vikings are able to beat the Niners just because they have that awesome home field advantage. And that makes so much of a difference with what was happening in the playoffs, especially. I mean, crowds are just wild. And I think Vikings fans will be much happier to see their team in the playoffs this season with how they were last year. I think the Vikings have a lot more just solid guys on their team than people realize. There's not very many position groups that I doubt for them. And it's funny just because of where their record was at the end of last season. They don't look like a very good team. But there's really no position that I can point to on their entire team and say that it's bad. Like, yes, the quarterback's lame, but even him, like, he's probably an above average player. And that's really how I feel about most positions. With home field advantage, they're going to be a dangerous team once they get to the playoffs. So they win wild card weekend as well. What do you think of my wild card weekend for the NFC?
All right, so let's go back to your first one, and that would be
Bears at Rams.
Rams Bears. All right. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the Bears win a playoff game. And you're right, it would come down to, and we talk about with the Titans, them having very shallow depth of talent on that team, very top heavy. The Rams are kind of in the same boat. They have a little bit more depth, though, a little bit more on the offense. On the defense, though, it's like you got two guys, and you're expecting like those two guys to shut down both phases of the offense. And all it takes is just one of them to not perform up to that superstar caliber that we've seen that they can. I think it'd be more Jalen Ramsey not doing that than it would be Aaron Donald. Just because Aaron Donald produces day in and day out, and Ramsey does have some off games, and we've seen Darnell Mooney give him the work. So there'd be any team that he slouches against, it would be the Bears. But I mean, it's a fun. It could happen. If I'm picking, I'm taking the Rams all day. They don't have much of a home field advantage. You are correct in saying that, though. It's a neutral site game. But I think when Matt Stafford gets into the playoffs here and has that taste on his tongue, he's coming out for the kill. He's not going to let this opportunity slip away from him.
All right. Really, the other matchups, I don't know. I'm guessing you probably feel pretty similar about the Saints going to Washington game, but I'm guessing you probably are pretty against the Niners at Vikings one.
Yeah, the Saints-Washington game, you're right. It's going to be a defensive battle throughout it. It's going to be whatever offense has more splash plays, I think. And we've talked about this ad nausea, saying the same thing you said, but different thing. Jameis would help the Saints in the playoffs, but Taysom would help them get to the playoffs. And I think that's just one of those. It would be a real dogfight if Jameis is the quarterback. Like, ooh, that would be a tough one. If Taysom's in it, I don't know about that. But interesting, and it's funny that we're predicting playoff games and we don't even know who the starting quarterback for that team is. And yeah, then this Minnesota game. Jeez, dude, what have you been smoking? I mean, you're right. Minnesota, out of all the like top 4 seeded teams, they have the best home field advantage. The unfortunate thing with that is, though, they're in a dome, and I would be like, yeah, that home field advantage. The fans are super loud. I'll give them that. But if they were also in the Minnesota weather this in January, the Niners probably wouldn't be able to handle this. Rookie Trey Lance, if he's the quarterback too, but they're in a dome, man, and the Niners are just a way better team, just way better in almost every facet. Like, they have that. I think if I had to give the Vikings an edge, maybe they have a better running game. They have more playoff experience as a team. Better wide receivers. But other than that, and San Fran's defense is just way better. But that's just me, certified Minnesota Vikings hater, saying that. So.
Oh, don't worry. I'll keep getting at you. So now, moving on to the divisional round. That means that in the AFC, the divisional round game for the 4 seed, the 4 seed heads to the 1 seed, meaning the Bills are playing in Tennessee. I will tell you, earlier in the season, I gave the Bills the loss when they head to Tennessee during the regular season. At this point, though, I think the Bills are actually the more complete team. And I think maybe after playing them twice, 2 years in a row, probably losing in Tennessee twice for 2 years in a row, and now having to go there a third time, since they're the more complete team, and they probably have advanced even more throughout the season, I do think that the thing we've talked about with the roster being very top-heavy in Tennessee finally catches up to them. That doesn't mean that Julio, AJ Brown, or even Derrick Henry don't have big games, but I think that Josh Allen is ready for these playoffs. And I don't think Josh Allen is ready to settle for anything less than at least getting back to that championship game that he lost last year. And I think the Bills actually do beat the one-seeded Titans in the divisional round. Then the Chiefs head to Cleveland. Honestly, I'm super excited for this. This was the week 1 matchup that I talked about before, but this is so much more interesting. These teams actually have a full year to develop now. I feel like Cleveland got so much better this offseason, and I feel like the Chiefs are almost just as loaded. Chiefs have Mahomes. The Browns have 0 flaws, in my opinion. Kansas City, right there on the brink of almost having that perfect roster, and Mahomes boosts them to pretty much make it even with Cleveland. The thing is that it's in Cleveland, and Cleveland's also got a running game that I feel like in their own building is really going to make it hard to beat them at home. And just because I feel like these teams are so close, once again, I'm going to rock with the home team here, and I'm going to say the Browns knock out the Chiefs here. So the AFC Championship game will be the Buffalo Bills playing at the Cleveland Browns, in my opinion. So what do you think? What do you think of the divisional round in the AFC?
Yeah. So the Bills Titans game, I think the Bills would be able to put it together after 2 games against them losing, because I also think that they're going to lose that game earlier in the season to Tennessee. Hopefully they figure out that number 2 corner problem, because you can't have Levi Wallace or Dane Jackson or Cam Lewis or whoever you have there getting worked by Julio or AJ Brown. You can't have that. But I do agree. The shallow, like the top heaviness of that team. If anytime it's going to catch up to you, it's going to be the playoffs, and it's going to catch up to you when you have very little talent on your defense. The time it's going to show is when a team just throws it all over you, and that's what the Bills do. And Tennessee's going to have some nicer weather than the home game that they would have played earlier. So they're really going to sling it. I don't think it's going to be like a divisional round game like it was Bills against Baltimore, where it was windy and raining and terrible weather. Josh Allen will have the opportunity to sling it. And yeah, it just, like you said, they won't lose that game because of AJ Brown, Ryan Tannehill, Julio Jones, Derrick Henry. They're going to lose it because of everyone else on the team. And that's like just because the talent level is so poor. And then Kansas City at Cleveland. Whew, that's going to be a great game. And you're right. Cleveland's roster is up there, like 1-2 most complete team, Cleveland. And then Kansas City, they're probably middling team. Just remove Mahomes from the equation. Middling team talent-wise, you put him there, moves him up into the top 5 of just like perfection for that roster because he's that good. And it's going to be, okay, so can the rest of these guys that, I don't want to say hold the team back, but are not as talented as other guys on Cleveland, like a linebacker depth for Kansas City, or even some of their secondary too, can that hold up against Cleveland when the linebacking core is great, secondary is great, offensive line, wide receivers, tight ends, everything is great for Cleveland. Yeah, it's going to be tough, and I'd probably give that one to Cleveland too if they're the home team. Yeah, that game would definitely come down for me. Whoever's the home team, I'm picking them, and then it results in the Battle of Lake Erie for the AFC Championship game.
That would be so exciting. Bills Browns. Who saw that coming 3 years ago? But yeah, no, it's going to be impressive. I'm if Kansas City gets knocked out before the championship game, it'll feel so weird. But, predicting the playoffs is, like, the hardest time to predict. Because I can throw a record out there, or, like, seeding-wise, I can say these teams are going to fall in this order, and really not feel too tough about it. But, like I said earlier, it's one loss and you're out in the playoffs, and things can go crazy. And you'll see that things get crazier in the NFC right here. Chicago Bears travel to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not gonna lie, I had a little more trouble explaining the Chicago at LA one. I think there's a lot of potential here that the Bucs get caught up on this hangover here. And
okay. I thought you were gonna say the Bucs. Oh wow, I misheard you.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say the Bears. Oh no.
No. The Bucs get caught up. They say, "Oh, we had one playoff game at home last year, and it was the Super Bowl. That was pretty cool. I mean, that was a cool crowd to play in front of. But we've got the 7 seed coming in here. I don't think Brady's ready to underestimate the Bears. I think the rest of the team could, though. I don't think the Bucs are a worse roster than the Bears at all. But I think the Bears have enough talent that if the Bucs really, for whatever reason, are overlooking them, especially after a long week of rest, and they're saying, it's just the 7 seed. We're no good. We got this. They could come in and win. And because of that, I think the Bears can beat the Bucs here, and I gave this win to the Bears. So you'll have a little bit of time to digest that, but don't worry, you'll be making the same face in another second, because Minnesota's going to the Washington football team, and Minnesota, I think Minnesota can beat these guys just because I think their quarterback can outplay the other quarterback. I really do. Kirk Cousins, not that crazy, but he's going up against Ryan Fitzpatrick and not my boy Taylor Heineke. If Heineke was playing, I may actually go the other way, but I feel like these teams are actually pretty even, and I just want to go like quarterback wise. I'm like, I don't know if Fitzpatrick can put it together for a whole postseason. I really don't think Fitzpatrick could. I don't know. We haven't seen Fitzpatrick in one playoff game, let alone him getting on that crazy hot of a streak for a whole season. I feel like he's going to burn out here, and that means that I feel like Minnesota's going to beat the football team in Washington.
Okay. I mean, I don't think Brady would let his teammates get wrapped up in that. Like you said, Brady wouldn't. Oh, we're playing the 7th seed. Brady's going to like take names. I don't think he lets the other team be like, "Hey guys, get your heads on straight. We're the 1 seed now. We still have to fight to get to the Super Bowl again." I don't think he lets that happen. It would be great if the Bears win. I mean, just prove both of us right on Justin Fields. But if they go on this much of a streak here in the playoffs, I would pick the Bears to win the Super Bowl at that point. If they beat the Rams and then the Buccaneers, I have no problem picking them over the Vikings after that, and then the Browns or the Bills. Like if they've proven they can beat those teams, they're the Super Bowl champions. And then the other game, what's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Kirk Cousins is not doing anything against that football team defense, in my opinion. I don't think he's doing much. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, they're great, but that secondary did improve. I mean, maybe Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson go to work on these rookies. Maybe the rookie woes finally come up for Benjamin St. Juste and the other guy that they brought in. But they also have Landon Collins. They have veterans in that secondary, too. I don't know about that pick, man. I'm waiting for, Vikings would like you to just do a 180 on me. Like, yeah, Vikings win the Super Bowl and Kellen Mond lifts the trophy up because just trying to trick me. But, I know we've never seen Fitzpatrick in the playoffs before, but I think if the woes would affect him right in the first round, then the jitters, I think he would lose the first game then if that's going to affect him. I don't think he'd win the first one then.
He's going up against Jameis though, so I feel like that balances it out. Like most likely Jameis, even if it's Taysom, I still feel the same way. But like I feel like those two balance each other out, and Washington's the home team in that one, and I feel like Washington's still a lot better of a roster than New Orleans. It's really weird because of the seeding. It had to fall this way. Like I'm saying, I don't like Minnesota going on the road. I really don't like Minnesota going on the road. But with how everything was falling, this is like the one game that they could go on the road and actually win. If it was Minnesota at Tampa Bay, if the seeding fell like that, guaranteed I'm picking the Bucs. Honestly, guaranteed I'm picking the Bucs. But for whatever reason. It's
Sure.
just how it. I'm serious. But now that gets us to the championship game. This is the Bills go to Cleveland in the AFC. I feel like this is probably a much more reasonable matchup in terms of like teams that people actually think will be good this season as compared to what I have in the NFC, obviously.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I'm not going to be a homer here. Honestly, I still think any team heading to Cleveland, especially in the postseason, is going to be nearly impossible to beat them. And I just really want to continue to say how high I am on the Browns. And honestly, like some years I feel really confident about putting one team or two teams. Like I feel like these are the two teams that's going to be in the Super Bowl. That's not a team. There's not two teams. I don't feel confident about the NFC. Really, anyone. I feel like there's a lot of stuff up in the air with the NFC, especially like if you move one of these teams around. If one of these teams becomes if the Rams are the 5 seed and the Niners are the 2 seed instead, like that changes everything. Completely changes everything to me. And it's just crazy how that can go. So I don't feel really confident about anybody in the NFC really, but if there's a team I'm picking in the AFC, I really want to go Cleveland heavy here. If not, it's Kansas City, but I am going to take the Browns to beat the Bills still because the Browns still have this home field advantage, and I think it's going to be enough to get them to the Super Bowl here. So reaction to that?
I think if there's any team that the Cleveland weather would affect the least, it would be the Bills. Like going there. I mean, not that like, oh, these teams are both acclimated to this weather. It's no, every guy goes to Florida or Cali in the off season. It's not like they stay in these places during the off season, but they've played there before. They're kind of used to it. But the fans there, that adds a completely different factor. So I understand the home field advantage there. Just weather wise, I don't think it would have. The Bills can game plan around that because they game plan around it most of the season. I would pick the home team in this. And the Browns have a better run game too. Yeah. And I don't trust the Bills to really stop saying that I could see them beating the Titans because they could stop the run there. I don't see them stopping Nick Chubb though. And that's just because the Cleveland has the talent on that team where if they don't like against the Titans, I think the Bills could neglect to stop, not fully neglect, but be weak at stopping the run, but there's weaker talent everywhere else on the Titans roster where not holding Derrick Henry to 58 yards is going to like be the reason you win the game. It's going to be something else. But Cleveland, you need to stop Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And I don't trust the Bills to be able to do that and then have a bunch of other stuff to go their way as well.
Well, yeah, I think the Bills can take advantage of holes the Titans have in their roster, and then they run into Cleveland, and it's like, okay, I don't know what places to look to try to take advantage of them. And then also, you're right, I don't think the Bills will necessarily struggle to throw the ball against the Browns because I don't think they'll struggle to throw the ball against anybody. But I think that the Browns having that elite level run game versus the Bills not really having a run game, just specifically in this game. I don't hate it most of the time. I really don't mind that the Bills are such a heavy air raid. I think in this game, it could hurt the Bills a lot. Mm-hmm. And then what's funny, because of how this played out, remember, we got to come back to that Week 18 game. The Vikings beat the Bears to win the division, which means that the Bears have to go to Minnesota now. The Bears played in LA and then in Tampa Bay. Really not two places with heavy home field advantages at all. And the Vikings lost to the Bears once this season already. The Vikings lost to the Bears. They're not going to be like Tampa and overlook them, and they're not going to be like LA. I feel like the home field advantage, literally, I know, I don't love it either, because realistically, like just saying that straight up, like just saying, oh yeah, Minnesota's going to be in the Super Bowl this year. I don't like that at all. I don't like saying that because I wouldn't
also don't like saying Minnesota's going to be in the Super Bowl this year purely because of their fans. That's what it sounds like. The only reason they're making it to the Super Bowl is because of their fans.
They're not a bad team. You're saying they're a bad team. They're not a bad team. I don't think that they're a bad team at all. I think they're a solid team, and they really don't have many holes. But yeah, no, Chicago's gonna have a tough time winning in Minnesota. I think this is a close game, but I'm just gonna squeak Minnesota out. Okay? And if you want to know the honest truth with how I have all this playing out, even though I have all this, with all that, and I built up all these games, I think all of these games, basically, for the playoffs I've described so far, are going to be great. With how everything played out in my schedule, the Super Bowl is going to suck. I think Cleveland kills Minnesota in the Super Bowl. I'm not kidding. If all this plays out perfectly, since you know who's in the Super Bowl, I think Cleveland would slaughter Minnesota. And like I said...
that would be...
Wait, let me get this in too.
Yeah.
One more thing. If I'm just saying this, like, randomly, I'm like, pick 2 teams to be in the Super Bowl this year, okay, Cleveland, Team A in the AFC is Cleveland, Team B in the AFC is Kansas City, and then Team A in the NFC is Tampa Bay, and Team B is first place finisher in the NFC West. Like, that's really it. Mm-hmm. I'm not picking anyone from the NFC North. It's just with how everything played out for me, I feel like there's potential. Minnesota's going to have 2 home playoff games when I really feel like if this is how it would go, Minnesota would have 2 home playoff games and they would have 1 game where they have to go on the road, and it's against an opponent that doesn't have that crazy of a quarterback situation, which is enough that they could pull that one off. But like I said, I still think they would get killed in the Super Bowl.
Well, you can say the same thing about Cleveland. Cleveland doesn't have that crazy of a quarterback situation.
You want to compare Fitzpatrick to Baker right now?
At the moment.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm ready for that discussion.
The broad yeah, I'm not ready to put Baker on that Mount Rushmore yet. But I think the whole broadcast, like, if the AFC Championship game happens first, to be like, which one of these teams is going to lose to Cleveland? And then if the AFC Championship game happens second, it's going to be, all right, which one of these teams is going to be the runner-up in the Super Bowl?
Yeah. I agree. I do agree.
I mean, it does sound like it'd be the most insane playoffs ever, at least from the NFC perspective, but the whole time it's just all these good teams dropping like flies, and then it's like, oh my god. These 2 teams are going to be fighting for the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is going to be garbage.
No, yeah. That's literally how I see it going. That's how I see it going. No, I mean, like I said, I did want to put some upsets in here. So really, I don't think my upsets came with the Minnesota games though. I know that Minnesota, like, because they're the team that's ending up in the Super Bowl, it's like, oh, they're the surprise. No, it's really that Chicago, the 7 seed, beat the 2 seed and the 1 seed. Like, that's the major surprise. Whereas Minnesota, it's just kind of like...
beating the 2 seed and the 1 seed just to lose to the Vikings 1 game away from the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Literally. Justin Fields going to go off.
Yeah.
And
the most successful Bears quarterback of all time at that point, he didn't even win a Super Bowl. Just because he beat that many good opponents and didn't really have... I mean, that defense is good, but with the team right now, I mean, the team's solid, but that offense, it'd be like him and Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney, just like, all right, guys, we need to just get this together.
Yeah, no. I will say once again, almost like any team in the AFC, there's basically like 6 teams in the AFC that I would say if they made the Super Bowl and they're not playing, like I said, they're not playing either A, Tampa Bay, or B, the winner of the NFC West, they're going to kill whoever they play in the Super Bowl. I think the AFC is that much better than the NFC now.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, even with how you made the playoff shakeout, I think any seed 1 through 7 in the AFC, if they make it to the Super Bowl and they're not playing either the Bucks, Rams or 49ers, I think they win that game.
Yeah, that's basically what I was trying to say. Yeah, no, I know. Unless Seattle or Arizona is shocking.
Mhm.
I don't know.
I mean, we had that one comment on our fantasy defense where the one guy said Arizona's defense is going to be superb. So,
Yeah.
waiting to see that come true.
No, but I mean, I wasn't ready to say that the Bucks would win every game in the playoffs going on the road 3 times last year, though. But every year,
I was
something wild.
But I was.
Man, I don't know what was wrong with you, but you're insane for picking a team on the road 3 weeks in a row. You're crazy. But yeah, no, I know. Yeah, no. See, the Bears tried to do it, but the Bears couldn't get through the last gauntlet of Minnesota.
Pathetic.
All right. Well,
1, 2. Oh, Minnesota.
Well, I mean, I guess I really didn't ask you though. I mean, like I got you to talk about every game I had lined up individually ahead of time, but then I just said that the Browns are going to kill the Vikings, and you agreed with it. So, I mean, I know you agree with it, but would you like to do any further analysis on that?
No, I mean, I don't know what there is to analyze. The Browns are a better team than the Vikings in every single facet of football. Kevin Stefanski gets to get his last laugh against the Vikings, I guess. Just not that I don't think he left on bad terms with them, but still, just be like,
Gotcha.
Staying with that old fart Mike Zimmer. Look what you could have promoted to head coach.
Listen, I think the thing I'm most excited for to hear from you, because you're gonna realize this. You're gonna realize this when you have to go through and do your playoffs. It's very hard to just pick, like, say, oh, I'm just gonna pick the higher seed every time. Like, you're gonna be like by the end of it, you're gonna be like, oh, geez, really? That's how this looks, and you're gonna be
This
like,
is how I'll do it, then.
Just blind dart throws. Yeah, it'll be
throwing
great.
darts at a piece of paper.
Anyways,
Figure it out.
You're nitpicking mine, so I'll be ready to nitpick yours.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I'm willing to say I probably have stretches on here, but it's for a fun exercise, and it's nothing that I feel is impossible. That's what I will say. It's nothing that I feel is impossible. But like I said, no freaking way I'm actually picking the Vikings. Just like straight up, tell me who's playing in the Super Bowl in the NFC. There's no way I'm picking the Vikings. It's just that's how this schedule thing played out. So,
yeah.
All right.
Well,
that all?
Yeah, I think we can have a graphic for this put up too, so people can look at that. Try to keep it all together. You can probably find it on our Twitter or our Instagram, which is right there, right?
Yeah.
Did that right that time. Look at that.
Yep.
So find it there. It should be up by the time this is up. Yeah, and besides that, I think we can cut it here.